Good evening. Welcome in RNQ Easino classes. Block number 2. Herme- her- block number 3. Hermeneutics. Unit number 1. Introduction to Hermeneutics 1.0 objectives. The aim of this unit is to enable to student to have a general picture of the Western hermeneutical history and the thems built therein. It also aims to familiarize the historical development of the hermeneutical theories and their concerns with the meaning and interpretations. Students also needs to familiarize the philosophical positions of different thinkers apart from the expositions here to get the nuances of the description here. 1.1 Introduction. Human search for truth and knowledge is an unending enterprise. There are different ways of knowledge and arriving at truth, irrespective of the source and medium through which knowledge has come about. Truth being arrived at is an undeniable fact that human experience and its analysis do point us in some direction. Since knowledge is mediated, it is in some way an interpretations. There is always a background in which perception takes place. The knowledge and truth are not exceptions to these phenomena. Thus, epistemological enterprise extends to those levels of analysis where we interpret with knowing. Thus hermeneutics become the understanding of the complex conditioning of human knowledge. The hermeneutical tendency is not limited to may one continent or nations or language stream. It is found in all peoples. In fact, it is one of the ways through which knowledge grows. 1.2 Meaning of hermeneutics. The Greek word hermeneuin meant to express, explain, translate, or interpret the sacred message. Originally, it was discussed in the Greek philosophy. Later was used extensively in the interpretations of the Bible. As science of interpretations, it became an important part of Christian theology in the West. The resulted in various schools of interpretations such as literal, allegorical, analogical, and anagogical, spiritual, mystical, etc. Beginning with scriptural interpretation. It was limited to the domain of sacred text only. However, today it has grown into different domains of human life. It has come out of the theological domain and has entered into the spheres of such as art, aesthetics, literature, architecture, and to all the notions that govern human life. Hermeneutics, through its methods and principles, sees the text or the object of interpretations in the present context. Traditionally, hermeneutics has been divided into two categories. They are a general hermeneutics concerned with the generalities such as context, language, history, and culture. B. Special hermeneutics concerned with specific such as figure of speech, symbols, poetry, prophecy, typology, doctrinal teachings, and various literary forms. 1.3 Development of hermeneutics. We find that 3 was a gradual development from the hermeneutics of the later historical to the hermeneutics of the grammatical. Historically, we can trace the growth of the term from classical understanding of the text to the advanced understanding of beyond the text. In other words, hermeneutics has grown from textual analysis to the analysis of experience. To sharpen the distinction, we can say that hermeneutical growth can be divided into theological hermeneutics and philosophical hermeneutics methods. However, the recent classification in hermeneutics so some different light as the interpretations lead to understanding, and this understanding affects interpretation can be understood as an activity that fills the gaps in our understanding. It means that interpretations always requires knowledge of one's own lack of comparison, knowledge of the fact that one is puzzled about something that one wishes to understand. Another sense of the word interpretations is called elaborative interpretations, which does not involve self-conscious quest for understanding. This comes more in terms of cultural objectives, limiting the interpretations to the text only. Interpretations can be divided into two kinds depending on their aim: to provide an understanding of the meaning of a text, or to provide an understanding of the relations of a text or its meaning to something else. Based on this the hermeneutics can be divided into meaning interpretations and relational interpretations. Meaning interpretation mainly focuses on four different aspects. They are the meaning as understood by the author of the text, the meaning as understood by particular audience, the meaning as understood independently of what authors or particular audiences understood. For the meaning as including both the meaning, the rational interpretations aim not to cause understanding of the meaning of a text in an audience, regardless of what conceptions of meaning is used, but rather something else that the interpreter selects. 1.4. The three components of hermeneutical enterprise. The growth of hermeneutics attests that there is a movement from the interpretations of the text to the understanding existence and life world. Therefore, the author, the text, and the reader are the three basic components of any hermeneutical enterprise. However, language, culture, and the other elements can be ignored in the hermeneutics. The capacity of the text. The text, in the strict sense of hermeneutics, is the key component. Text, generally understood as that stretch of written language which has a beginning and end. In the metaphorical sense, text can be extended even to include message generated by sign systems of various religious, economic, social, etc. structures, nonverbal body indicators, etc. Text is the basis on which the operations of hermeneutics take place. One of the definitions state that a text is a group of entities used as signs, selected, arranged, and intended by an author to convey a specific meaning to an audience in a certain context. It can be a written, printed text, or the text or of mental images too. Text Text has many uses such as expressing emotions, issuing commands, electing answers, making requests, causing actions, etc. Text cause understandings. The meaning of the text is different from the text and the understanding. The author and the reader both are part of the text, but both are eclipsed in some sense. For reader is absent in the act of writing and the author is absent in the act of reading. The text therefore assumes greater role in transforming his readers. Hermeneutics therefore entails a study of a processes and operative conditions of transforming text when the necessary conditions for interpretations become operational. An event of communication takes place within the temporal flow of the reader life and experience. This sort of textual potency capacity to influence the reader can be seen from three different angles. These angles are from the part of speech, act, narrative, world, and interpersonal understanding. Despite the horizon of expectation, the text can surprise, contradict, or even reverse such horizon of expectation. The next possesses meaning itself of itself, the meaning of the author and the meaning projected by the reader. The capacity of the reader interpreter, like the text reader who has an impact on the text, being influenced by the text and influencing the text. Every reader bring a horizon of expectations to the text. Horizon of expectation is a mindset, a system of reference which categorizes the which characterizes the reader's finite viewpoint amidst his or her situatedness in time and history. From the reader's point of view, there is always an attempt to understand the intentions of the author at the same time and the understand the text in itself. However, the reader can't undo the situation or background on which he bases his reading. This interplay exists in understanding the text. Always, there are six different levels where the reader influences the text and its meaning. They are intertextual, situational, horizontal, semantic, hermeneutical, and theoretical frameworks. The interpreter in four ways changes the object of interpretations, be it text or anything that can be interpreted. They are done through idealizing the object of interpretations, resegmenting the object of interpretation, reconceiving the object of interpretation, and through recovering an underlying object. The capacity of the author. The author can't be ignored in the hermeneutics. It is his worldview unconsciously comes into the text and affects the next. The author can't dispatch himself fully from his historical condition. He feeds both the actual meaning and intended meaning into the text. However, the text has traces of his world view and his times, which can be traced through hermeneutics. 1.5 Historical aspect. Historical aspect will analyzing the history of hermeneutics, we can divide into two different major phases. They are: one, interpretative stage, regional hermeneutics; two, stage of methodological development, general hermeneutics; three, ontological hermeneutics; four, contemporary hermeneutical trends. It is worth nothing in this regard that there was gradual development from the initial stages of interpretations of myths to the interpretations of the text. Further, hermeneutics grew towards the methodological developments, hermeneutics of experience or the ontology. Interpretative stage. Regional hermeneutics. Act of interpretation is implied in human consciousness since the very beginning of human history. Gradual development of human consciousness made humans to realize their own self, other, and nature and express them with understanding expressions and applications. At this stage of hermeneutics is involved the interpretations of mythics, legends, symbols, text. The time period of this stage began find in the ancient Greek and Rome. Hermeneutics was not understood as a discipline at this stage. It was deciphering of or oracles, omens, and divine messages. Stage of methodological development. Hermeneutics as a discipline developed during the Middle Ages, especially during the Renaissance and Reformation period. The development in jurisprudence, philology, and philosophy brought great impact on hermeneutics during this period. The main contributors during this period are Johannes Bonfeld Chladnius (1710 to 1759), Friedrich August Wolff (1759 to 1824), Friedrich Ast (1778 to 1841), Schleiermacher, Dilithi, Humboldt, and others. Ontological hermeneutics, the theoretical framework which was developed earlier up to the 19th century, paved way to deeper hermeneutics. Hermeneutics took a leap from the textual analysis to the life experiences or towards the ontology. The growth in phenomenology as a science by Edmund Husserl 1959 to 1938, and later on followed by Martin Heidegger, Gadamer, Habermas, Betty, Paul Ricoeur, Derrida, Richard Rorty paved way to much more analysis of the human existence, leading even further to a scientific realm. Contemporary trends. In the 20th century, hermeneutics is no longer a methodology of doctrine concerned with decoding the meaning and the truth claim of text, but was a broader methodology and a philosophical approach to experience that was sensitive to the limits of language and history. The contemporary trends show directions in liberation, hermeneutics, feminist hermeneutics, black hermeneutics, etc. 1.6 Schools of hermeneutics, theoretical models. 1. Hermeneutics of understanding, Schleiermacher, Dalithi, Beatty focus on flow of life as the hermeneutical key. 2. Existentialist hermeneutics, Kierkegaard, Martin Heidegger, Rodolph Bultmann focus on the self-involvement and subjective understanding. 3. Hermeneutics of meta-criticism, Gadamer, Pannenberg questions the rationality of our beliefs and of our social practices. Hermeneutics of suspicion and retrieval power requires suspicion of explanations and retrieval of understanding possibility. 5. Socio-critical hermeneutics, Habermas, Richard Rorty search for a transcendental basis of hermeneutics. 6. Liberation hermeneutics, Latin American theological enterprise specially concerned with the emancipation and reading of Bible from the liberation perspective from the oppressive structures, economic poverty and political powerlessness. John Lewis Segundo, J. Servino Croato, Gustavo Guterres and others are important contributors here. 7. Black hermeneutics focus on the mm, colonial history and apartheid slavery. James Cone, John S. Mabty, Desmond Tutu, etc. 8. Feminist hermeneutics focus on the women's emancipations. Elizabeth Scholzer, Fironja Fiorenza Mary Ann Tolvet T. Dora Settle, Simone D. Beaufort, Ellen Marks, Rosemary Radford, etc. 1.6 Philosophical basis and contributions towards hermeneutics. Friedrich Friedrich Schleiermacher, 1786 to 1834. Friedrich Schleiermacher belongs to the Romantic movement and the Moravian Pietism. For Schleiermacher, Schleiermacher, the hermeneutics has the complex domain of speaking and language, and not merely the biblical hermeneutics or the interpretations of the classics. His hermeneutics can be divided into major themes such as understanding consists in experiencing the mental processes of the author of a text. B. It is grasping the meaning of the parts through dividing the whole and understanding the whole through grasping of the parts. C. It involves perceiving the individuality of the author as a human user of sad language. D. To go beyond the world of the author, he held the view that hermeneutics is a connection up through from the speaker or to the listener. There is an entire living context for every utterance. After the Canadian critique was his contribution in hermeneutics can be put into two major themes. They are a possibility of Christian theology, B. Possibility of the process of understanding. The task of hermeneutics, therefore, for him was finding out, in the first place, how does the divine truth's translational dimensions interact with the critical rational patterns. Secondly, how does understanding the elements components of text relate to a very intuitive in intuitive anticipation of the text as a whole. Thirdly, how does understanding links with the pre-understanding to which the subject matter the text relates. In this context, he divides the hermeneutical enterprise into two major fields such as a historical grammatical hermeneutics, b. physiological technical hermeneutics. In both the types of recognized certain amount of uncertainty and wanted to develop certainty in both the fields. When there is uncertainty on text, there needs to be guessing, conjecture, conjecture, knowing the historical situations of the author, etc., needs to be taken into considerations on certainty. He had two views: certainty as a demonstrative or method for historical grammatical hermeneutics, and the other as the divinatory certainty, a method for physiological technical hermeneutics. Neither grammatical nor the physiological have hold over each other's domain, but are interdependent in the hermeneutical circle. Objectivity and the subjectivity of the person contribute to the fuller understanding. ସିଆଡୁ ଯାଇ କଥା ଶୁଭୁନି। Fuller understanding of the text. Schleiermacher had the view that the world has to be understood as a part of whole leading to complete illumination. William Dilthey, 1833 to 1911. Dilthey is famous for his contribution on understanding and interpretation. Dilthey held that interpretation is a process of coming to know. What we come to know through interpreting the products of human spirits is the full scope of physic physic and spiritual life. Accordingly, physics life can be abstracted from historical consequences. It is part of social and cultural systems. Hermeneutics begins from the objective spirit, whole range of objective specifications, and not merely from individual spirit. Objective spirit is the embodiment of human thought and action. This is the framework of communal meaning to which elementary understanding is oriented. Dilithey's focus was to understand the author better and not understanding him as exactly he is. Therefore, the original context of the author and the entire situational nexus had to be taken into consideration. His notions of understanding can be traced to his differentiation between natural science and social science. While natural science are descriptive, social science need to be understood in the context of human life. Life for him represent the shared flow of human activities and experiences which together constitute human experience, both in its social diversity and in its individual particularity. There is an interactions between expressions of the other based on experience and self-understanding. Therefore, hermeneutics goes beyond the natural science methodology. In this process of understanding, there is a tracing of universal in the particular and the whole in the part. This type of hermeneutics leads into history because both the author and the interpreter share a common dimensions of the meaning of being human. There is a transcendence of narrow concerns to the horizon of universal history, which gradually becomes the hermeneutic field. There is a marrying of the individual with the knowledge of the universal history. This process of hermeneutics leads to the understanding of history as the expressions of human Dilithian notions of category of life. Human life was later on transformed by Husserl and Hades Heid Heidegger, Heidegger into an existential category. Martin Heidegger 1889 to 1979. To understand the Heideggerian hermeneutics, we must understand his basic positions. In Hegelian writings, hermeneutics denotes both the process of human interpretations or understanding from within a particular operations and also transcendental or meta-critical discipline which seeks to explore the foundations on which the possibility of understanding is based. His basic assumptions are firstly the horizons for the understanding of being it is time. Secondly, the distinction between scientific categories and essential categories, and third, the givenesses of our world. Human is at the root of hermeneutics. It is the human person who is both the subject and the object of interpretation. The complexities of human person demand the diversities of explanations. This fact has been emphasized by hermeneutic phenomenology and existentialism. Heideggerian attempt in this regard is to understand and interpret all human existence in a reciprocal reflections of human nature. Heideggerian attempt is to interpret Dacian in its historically concrete situation. The Dacian being in the world understands itself in its facticity, Tempor- temporality and horizon. The meaning emerges in Dacian's relationship with everything else in the given world. In the circular process of meaning discovery, being human person is understood and interpreted. Having discovered this ontological analysis of the Dacian in the early writings of Heidegger, we find refined views in the second and the third phases of Heidegger, wherein there is a moment from rigorous analysis of being to the gentle unfolding of the being through poetry and art. In the broader constraint of Heideggerian analysis of the ontology of Dacian, we find that such understanding of Dacian itself is an interpretation departing from the Western traditional metaphysics, which had impressed the being. Heidegger wanted to give a reorientations of ontology of being. His approach was existential as the being emerged from the foreground of other entities and ontological as it is a phenomenon of interpretations. The analytical approach only provides the Dacian's existence structure in its existence in space and time. However, the meaning of being can't be arrived through analytics, rather it is through interpretations, which is fundamental concept of ontology, a basis for transcendent transcendental inquiry. In this process of meaning and understanding of Dacian, being in the world is the pre-understanding. This pre-understanding allows for the possibility of making sense of what entities are. Therefore, hermeneutics is a clarification of pre-understanding, which is a structure of our being in the world. Along with the understanding, these existential structures include state of mind and talk, which provides the conditions for the new knowledge. They also find that total expression in storage care as the being of the Asian. The aim of fundamental ontology therefore is the conditions of temporality offer the possibility of original care, and as the ultimate horizon of the interpretations of being in the world. Therefore, the Heideggerian attempt in the initial phase was to discover the meaning of being. However, there is a moment from this phase to the next phase of existential circle, or the ontological circle. In understanding being is considered as existing, therefore it is as potentially for being in the very terms of Heidegger. It is the projections, but it is inauthentic or inauthentic 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 if it is considered as the meaning intended by other in a methodi- interpretations. In this context, being does not acquire new knowledge, rather it interprets the world which it has already understood. In this process of disclosing, there is a possibility of interpretations. Therefore, the understanding is directed in order to which has the structure of something as something. The four structure and the structure do play an important role in the interpretations of something as something. That is the as structure. Some interpretations is founded on the four structure of understanding, that is to say that anything be understand is interpreted by either deriving concept used from foresight or four conception worldview, or by forcing it into pre-existing categories which do not correspond to it. Being meaning is the open which of a projections in terms of which something becomes intelligible as something. It gets its structure from a four having foresight and a four conceptions. In this context of emergence of a new meaning of the dash in the hermeneutical circle, or the existential circle can be avoided. It can only be understood that by placing the being properly, one can get the new possibility of the meaning of dancing. There is no objective understanding in the sense of scientific objectivity, rather it is in the first structure of the being in much of its existential sense. Hence George Gadamer. The hermeneutical ideas of Gadamer are found in his famous book Truth and Method 1975. He was a student of Heidegger. He's placed himself in the traditions of Western philosophy and raised new questions about the nature of traditions and their transformations. Gadamerian hermeneutics is an attack on the role of method in hermeneutics. Gadamer hermeneutics can be understood as an integrations of the interpreter into the history traditions. He believed that in the process in interpretations, the interpreter can transcend one's own historical setting. The very aspect of experience is integral with cognitions, which is part of historical nature of man. It is in our language that we express our experiences as humans when we participate in our traditions. This experience in a historical setting can't be exempted at the same time. It is through the very expressions in language that we participate in our tradition through the interpretations of sign works, texts, etc. in a constant dialogue and language. Hermeneutic experience becomes one existence. He was alert he was alert to the riddle of language and was aware of the limits of what can be said. Gadamer philosophical hermeneutics is not a philosophical method. He held that no method can ever be sufficient for the disclosure of truth, and that truth belongs to essentially to history, that it can never be disclosed fully. When the world was growing towards the certainty of science as the mark of judgment, he held that human life needs reflective and practical judgment. For Gadamer, hermeneutics is not limited to aesthetic experience, jurisprudence, and translations only. He held that after the Kantian limits of reason, it has a universal obey. Hermeneutics does not deal with the isolated modes of experience but represents the mode of experience itself. Giving importance to history, he held that traditions history has been preserved and transmitted through the language, but it confined to the logic of language itself. Therefore, hermeneutics is the conversations between history and human affairs. The struggle is therefore of understanding between the participants of that conversations. ସେ ଚଢିଟେ ଅଛି ଆଉ ସେ ଟୋକଲ ଗୋଟେ ନେଳିଆଟେ ନେଇ ଚାଲୁ କଲର ବାହାରିବା କହୁଥିଲି ଆଚ୍ଛା ନା ଯେତେବେଳେ ଏଇ ଟୋକଲିଙ୍କର ଏଇ ତ ନେଳିଆ କଲର ବାହାରିବ କିଲୋ ନା ସେଇଠି ଗୋଟେ ତା ପ୍ୟାଣ୍ଟ ତଳେ କଲର ବାହାରିବ ଦେଖିବି ନା କଲର ବାହାରିବନି ସେ ପ୍ୟାଣ୍ଟ ତଳେ ଗୋଟେ ଅଛି ये कौन हो टॉप ये टोकल ऐसे बांटती है सब कोई हाँ से तो कौन लगाई वाले तो ना fusion of horizons. Gadamer bases himself on the linguistic constitutions of the world. तू आण भाग मु जान नहीं बनेगी तो बेगा सारे कोड बिगाड़ वो ध्यान दे भी मु world where understanding is language bound. At the same time, language also provides positive hermeneutical conditions for understanding, because the linguistic world is the intersubjective world which opens up the possibility of communication and has a universal dimensions. In the transmissions of tradition through language, or the fusion takes place, the human finitude is manifest in the traditions. The task of traditions is to engage the openness of history and to illuminate the way in which traditions form and deform themselves in the infinite process of fusion. Language, the medium of transmission, is present in literature. Self-reflexivity of language is found in the poetry, because poetry is always language that is about language. Here the language returns to itself with greatest density, which is similar to the experience of finitude found in the history. Finitude is the concept he derived from Heidegger, which is against the background of relacement meditations than objective or calculative thinking of the being. Language conceals as well as reveals, and thus language becomes the medium of hermeneutic experience. Through the limits of language, translations becomes the supreme form of hermeneutic experience of language. For Gadamer, language not only brands experience as finite but opens its transcendent possibilities. The finitude, the limits of experience through language opens up the possibility of solidarity, and true communications for the present world. Gadamer does not find the possibility of a future world through the lenses of science and technology, rather through the art, poetry, where there can be no expertise, no authority, and where there is infinite openness of interpretations. Habermas is one of the most important and influential contemporary theorist of socio-critical hermeneutics. Socio-critical hermeneutics may be defined as an approach to text which seeks to penetrate beneath their surface function to expose their role as instruments of power dominations or social manipulations. Hermeneutics for him is a metacritic of power which aims to achieve to liberations of those over whom his power or social manipulations is exercised. His major contributions can be seen through his theory of communicative actions, which deals with the relations between social practice, intersubjectivity, language, and system. Habermas understands language having the functions of reaching understanding and coordinating actions and socializing actors as well. It is in these two functions of language the communication takes place as through understanding. Communicative acts serve as the transmission of culturally stored knowledge, and through coordinating actions the communicative acts are the fulfillment of norms appropriate to a given context. Paul Ricoeur Ricoeur's hermeneutics too is centered on explanations and understanding. Hermeneutics for him is a metacritical discipline which embodies the ask of unmasking of explanations and the creative functions of understanding. He understood that understanding works at a post critical level when explanations is critical, socio critical, or meta understood that understanding works at a post-critical level when explanation is critical, socio-critical, or meta-critical. Explanation entails the willingness to expose and to abolish ideals which are merely projections of the human will. Understanding requires a willingness to listen with openness to symbols and to indirect language. Thus, the two major areas of hermeneutics, explanations and understanding, invite respectively metacritical or socio-critical suspicion, with in turn bring about revaluations and also post-critical retrieval, embodying openness towards new possibility which may entail renewal or change. Since he based his theory on Freudian understanding, his hermeneutics is known as hermeneutics of suspicions and retrieval. Paul Ricoeur held the view that the existence itself is a mode of hermeneutics interpretations. According to him, the social sciences fall outside philosophy, wherein it has a exchange with them, dialogue with them for the meaning to emerge in a broader understanding. The meaning is mediated through in an endless processes of interpretation, cultural, religious, political, historic, and scientific. Hermeneutics for him is the art of deciphering indirect meaning. Ricoeur oppose the idealist view that the self is transparent to itself. The self is always as another. The self discovers itself through linguistic meditations of signs, symbols, stories, ideologies, metaphors, and myths. The self returns to itself through the language of the others, enriched enlarged. His effort was to find a midway between rationalism of Kant and transcendental idealism of Husserl in deciphering the indirect meaning. There is scope for speculative through wherein we enter into symbolic meaning, thus the encounter each with symbols and their meanings. Symbols have expressions of double meaning, wherein a primary meaning refers to a beyond itself, to a second meaning which is never given directly. Ricoeur's hermeneutics is not confined to myths and symbols. It moved from reflective conscious consciousness to the subjective bill, and later on this hermeneutics was extended to the interpretations of all phenomena of a textual order, narratives and ideologies. It is at this jun- 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 juncture 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 he the social sciences, moving away from the traditional categories of explanations and understanding. He moved from speech to text, wherein the acknowledge the alterity and distanciation of meaning as essential dimensions of hermeneutic field. In the process of going beyond the next brings us beyond epistemology to ontology, where the being is constantly interpreted and never finally completed. The most radical view of Ricoeur is privileging of the text as model of interpretations. Meaning is no longer an intuitive one nor a trans transcendental conditions to the next brings the circuit of internal reflections and exposes us to subjective horizons of language and history. Meaning involves someone saying something to someone about something. Interpretation thus explores the confines of the timeless reflective subject and discloses us as language using beings in a world with others. It brings in the complexities of meaning in an inter-subjective situations in the horizons of history and traditions. The meaning gets extended because the next functions as a mediator between the reader and the author. Hermeneutics produces second order references even through it enjoys the autonomy of authors. Meaning it in this context, hermeneutic discloses a hermeneutic circle of historical intersubjectivity to interpret. Meaning is to arrive in the middle of an exchange which has already begun, in which we seek to orient ourselves in order to make new sense out of it. There is no hermeneutic subject which intends meaning, rather it responds to the proposal of meaning which the matter of text unfolds. There is a transcendence of subjective consequences of the possible new worlds of meaning. This selfhood which is open to the unfolding of meaning is at one end of the hermeneutic circle, makes the second order reference beyond the first order reference of the author. Therefore, it is Going beyond an ecology and ideology, working of the text itself as a process of semantic innovations in the case of symbol. This involves a crossing of internationalities at the level of the world. In the case of metaphor, it is a production of a new meaning at the level of sentence. In the case of narrative, it is the form of an employment which synthesizes heterogeneous temporal elements at the level of language as a whole. Derrida. Deconstruction is the most famous of Derrida's terms. He seems to have appropriated the term from Heidegger's use of destructions in Being and Time. Derrida has provided many understandings of deconstruction. Some of them, these understandings are classical. The first is the early one, making reversal of Platonic emphasis of essence over appearance being reversed and appearance being given predominance. The second definition is less metaphysical and more political. Derrida says that deconstruction is practiced in two styles. There is the genealogical style of deconstructions, which recalls the history of a concept or theme. Them on the other hand, there is the more formalistic or structural style of deconstruction, which examines the historical paradoxes or aperios. Derrida calls the first aporia the epoch of the rule law must be conserved and also destroyed or suspended, suspension being the meaning of the word epoch. The second aporia, the ghost of the undecidable, deconstructs from the inside every assurance of presence and thus every criteriology that would assure us of the justice of the decisions. Third is called the urgency that obstructs the horizon of knowledge. A horizon is both the opening and limit that defines an infinite progress or a period of waiting. It is a kind of thinking that never finds itself at the end. 1.7 issues involved. After analyzing the hermeneutics in its theories and practice, we can cluster the few questions which can still be discussed. They are: one, what is the objective meaning of the text and how can we determine it is only literal or more than literal. 2, what is objectivity when there is a vagueness around neutrality of the text. 3, what is objective in the way of fixing meaning and how this objectivity is related to continuous. 4, what is structure of the things text which can be interpreted. 5, how does the logic of interpretation different from that of natural sciences. 6, how does paradigm shifts in understanding and social experience affect that objective interpretations. 7, is every hermeneutic process relative says text and how can we justify it. It is worth nothing in the modern world. The problem of pluralism, one of the basis of pluralism is hermeneutics. The authenticity and fixing of meaning more than one way comes in terms with the metaphysics in interpretations. The separations between the objects of interpretations and the interpretations itself is a crucial question in these connections. Secondly, the questions of representations at the background of language, culture, belief system, etc. arises in the context of interpretations. When we look from the realistic and idealistic viewpoints, it becomes difficult to fix the meaning than falling into the relativistic trap.